Hey y'all, hey, it's your girl TheEducateHER here, and I'm here with my first video. Oh, alright y'all. So if you cannot already tell from the title, these are basically my reflections from 2020. Now, I have a lot of reflections. However, I boiled it down to 4. More than any other year, 2020 has caused me to reflect a lot. It made me think about a lot. And part of that is because, I have no choice. We're in a whole panoramic, aka a pandemic. And, I had the time to really sit down and think about these things. And so, at the beginning of the year, or when I turned, on my birthday, around my birthday, I set some expectations and some intentions for myself. And I'm very proud of myself because I followed those things. And I realized the difference that it made when I did follow those intentions. I pride myself on being very intentional, but sometimes I don't follow through with those intentions, and I'll leave it on the wayside, or I'll forget certain things, or just push it to the side for a little bit in the efforts of appeasing other people. But I think last year we were trying to scramble because we went into this whole lockdown quarantine situation in March, and we were really trying to find our footing. But now that we're in the groove of things, I'm really grateful for 2020. I think 2020 taught me a lot, and I'm grateful for it. I think 2020 taught a lot of us a lot of things. And so I'm going to share 4 of my reflections with you. And, if it resonates, leave it in the comment section. If you want to add, go ahead, leave it in the comment section, because we finna talk about it, okay? So let's hop on into these reflections. All right, so if you see me looking down, I am reading my notes. I wrote every single one of them down in my notebook to make sure that I touch each of my points. All right, so the first thing that I learned this year, and I recently heard someone say this, is work hard on yourself. Work harder on yourself and not on your job. And I heard this maybe 2 weeks ago. I'm lying. Maybe it was last week. I was in an Instagram live for the Insightful Teacher. Love him to death. Listen, if you have an Instagram, please make sure you follow the Insightful Teacher. He is one of, he's legit my teacher spirit animal. He was talking about different things that he also learned throughout the year. I think it was Teachers After Dark or something. And one of the things that he said was that he learned not to, it's either he learned not to, or he's practicing working harder on himself and not his job. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, that's it. It clicked to me. I'm like, that legit is what I'm doing. I'm learning to work harder on myself and not my job. And that is honestly one of the reflections I had. So I honestly believe that if you're not, and it goes for any person or any profession, that if you're not good mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, if the self is not okay, you're not going to be able to do your work. You're not going to be able to engage with people the way you need to. You're not going to be able to engage in your work the way you need to. No matter what position you hold, it's just not going to happen because there's something missing, right? And so you have to honestly make the time to self-care. You have to give yourself that, right? I know for me, if I'm not where I need to be, I'm not able to do this work effectively and efficiently. I'm not able to help my students and be there for my students the way that I need to be. I'm not able to show up for them the way that I need to. And so I need to make sure that I am constantly pouring into myself or surrounding myself around people that pour into me when I feel like I don't have anything to pour from. It's important that you're not pouring from an empty cup. I know we hear it a lot. It talk about it in church. You hear people talk about it all the time. You hear people talking about it outside of church. You cannot pour from an empty cup, right? That's when it's maintaining a bank account. When you have a whole bank account, you cannot withdraw from something that is negative. You cannot withdraw from a negative balance. You cannot withdraw from a bank account that has no money in it, right? So you have to constantly make sure that your cup is full. I cannot give what I do not have. And so that is one lesson that that I have learned. And it's not like I didn't know it before, but this year we really got to put it into practice because we are in quarantine. I think I had time to, especially with everything that's going on. I think I was more able, or I am able to put these things into practice because I do have the time and I am in my own space. So I'm able to see it more clearly. I'm able to see what I'm missing. Another reflection was to grant myself some grace. So if it's one thing about me, I don't know if it's the Leo in me. I don't know if it's the way that I grew up, but I am a perfectionist by trade. And I feel like if something is just like only a millimeter, if it's wrong by a millimeter, then everything is just out of whack. Like, that's not how I envisioned it. That's not how I wanted it. And I'm just like, it's not happening. It's just not it. And I learned to grant myself some grace because I would be so hard on myself. I'm like, damn, like, this is not what we discussed. But in actuality, it's just like, you know what? It's okay. Everything is not in your control. God allows certain things to happen for a reason, and that's just that. It's just the way that life goes. And sometimes that also reminds me that, like, I need to make sure that my vision for myself was aligned with God's vision for me. I need to make sure that my vision for myself was aligned with God's vision for me. And so that also humbles me too, because sis I be ODing on myself sometimes. It's okay if things don't happen the way that you expected to the first time. It's a learning process. I don't remember I think Einstein was the one that said this. He was talking about, he basically was trying to say, like, he did not fail at one thing. Like, he just found 99 ways not to do something. And I think that that's something that I constantly have to remind myself of, because it's not like the first attempt it didn't work. Like, you didn't fail. You just learn different ways that it won't work, or like you learn different ways that won't work for you. And then to add on to that, in granting myself some grace, I learned to celebrate the small things. Now, when I tell you I used to hate this phrase because they say this at work all the time, oh my God. Son, we are constantly reminded to celebrate the small things, but it's like, what does that even mean? And I think for the first time in my 8.5 years of teaching, I finally understand what that means. I guess because we have the time to really think through certain things now because we're home, I'm able to like think through different processes and like figure things out, or like go through different things. And it's just like, damn, like, I really did that. We are conditioned to celebrate the big event, right? But you don't just get to certain places, or you don't just reach certain places, right? Like, there's a process to things. There's steps that you took to get to that place. And it's very important that you celebrate each and every one of those, because if it wasn't for those small things, it would not have led up to the big thing. Because if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for you putting in your effort into doing those small things, or like engaging in those small things, you wouldn't have gotten to the end result, honestly speaking. I think not only me, but like we as a people also need to learn to celebrate the small things, because they do matter. Period. I feel like I'm preaching today. Hallelujah. Somebody say amen in the comments. All right. And with celebrating the small things, like I said, I am a perfectionist. During the panoramic, and yes, I said panoramic because it's a panoramic, I started 2 businesses. So I have an online fashion boutique. Well, technically is one. But I started my teachergram, my teacher tube. I started this whole thing over, and I also started an online fashion boutique. And sometimes like I'll be on Instagram, I'm like, damn, how they get there that fast? Or like, how they do this that fast? Or I'm like comparing myself to like people's journeys, and it's just like, sis, you're your own competition. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, what's for you is gonna be for you. Okay? It doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. It doesn't matter what anybody else is saying. What's for you is going to be for you, right? And so I have to constantly remind myself that I am my own competition. Like, the only person stopping me from doing anything is me, because I'm the one that has to put in the work. Like, I know the goals that I set for myself, and I'm the only one that's going to stop me from doing those. Nobody else. Because nobody else's opinion matters but God's. Not that I'm like insecure and anything about certain things, but it's just like, damn, I want to get to a certain place already. But like I said, celebrating the small victories. Some processes may take longer than others. Some processes may take a shorter time. It just depends, right? But those are just some things that I learned. I think, well, that was it for my reflections. But I think in total, thinking about the different reflections that I have, the one word that I think everyone can agree on that describes what 2020 taught us is how to pivot. We went from celebrating January 1st, 2020 in church or wherever you decided to celebrate, and then 2.5 months later, we're on lockdown. Like, I legit remember watching the news when the first coronavirus case showed up in the United States. I was actually in Florida when I saw this, and I was like, oh damn, I hope it don't come to New York. And a month later, we're in lockdown. And I think it just caused us to adjust quicker. It caused us to adjust faster and like really have to adapt to the situation. And I think we learned how to pivot, right? And I think that is so important, because we're so used to like doing things the same way, and we're used to doing things like all the time that we don't really realize that sometimes you need to change. And I feel like a lot of times like there are certain things that we need, but we either ignore it or we don't see it. And sometimes we have to pause. Like, we have to be like forced to pause in order to see it. And I think a lot of the things that we used to ignore before, we're able to see it now because we had to pause. Like, we had the time to acknowledge these things. Like, we have no choice but to acknowledge these things because it's right in front of us. So I think more than any other year, 2020 taught me a lot. But I think 2020 taught me a lot, and I'm appreciative for the fact that it did. I don't want to sound crazy, but if we didn't have this, if we weren't like locked down or whatever, never mind my background, it's Brooklyn for you. If we did not have this lockdown, I don't think I would be able to, like, I may have had some of these same reflections, but I don't think I'd be able to appreciate it as much and pay attention to it as much, because it'll just be the same hustle and bustle. And I think that I was allowed to pause and like really reflect on the things that needed to change, the things that I was doing well. That's it for my reflections. If anything resonates with you, leave it in the comment section, because I would gladly be responding. Also, if you have not followed TheEducateHER at Instagram, Instagram.com. What am I saying? So that was it for my reflections of 2020. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Oh, shoot, that's cute. I think I like TED better, but whatever. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for tuning into my reflections. What are some reflections that you had for 2020? And what are some things that like you are making sure that you continue working on in 2021? What are some goals and goals you have for yourself? And make sure you leave that in the comment section. You can also email me at TheEducateHER@gmail.com, and we'll be able to chat there as well. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see y'all in my next video. Oh.